Imagine just tapping your phone and instantly earning from rental income. Or maybe seamlessly trading properties, across continents. It sounds a bit sci-fi, doesn't it? But this is actually happening now. It's the burgeoning reality of tokenized real estate.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's moving fast. Today, we're really diving deep into two platforms kind of leading the charge here,
Hmm.
Landshare and Propy. And, forget traditional real estate thinking for a minute. These platforms are innovating at a really rapid pace.
Right. And to really unpack their potential, we thought it'd be interesting to explore like a hypothetical clash of titans. Imagine Grant Cardone
Mhm.
probably championing one approach
Yeah.
and maybe Robert Kiyosaki arguing for the other. We'll also be drawing on, info straight from Landshare and Propy themselves, plus recent market news.
Yeah, exactly. And our mission really is to help you understand what Landshare and Propy actually offers. So whether you're looking for, say, passive income or maybe faster global transactions, or maybe you're just curious about where property investment is heading, well, this deep dive is for you.
Okay, let's get into it then. First things first, we need to understand what each platform actually does. What's Landshare's core thing?
Okay, so Landshare, their main focus is tokenizing U.S. rental properties. Think of it like taking a rental house and dividing it into digital tokens. So you could buy a fractional ownership without needing the whole chunk of cash for the property.
Right.
A big appeal is definitely the potential for passive income.
From the rent, right? The rental yields. We've seen numbers quoted like around 7% to 11% APY. There
Mhm.
was a specific Michigan property mentioned getting close to 10.9% annually.
Wow.
And the clever bit, I think, is their dual token system. You've got land, that's for like platform governance, utility,
Okay.
and then LSRWA. That's designed more like a stable coin, directly backed by the actual rental properties. So it aims for more predictable value, which is good if you're focused on income.
And entry point.
Oh, yeah. You can start with literally $1. And
Yeah.
these tokens, they trade globally 24/7. Owning a piece of a rental property for like the cost of a coffee, that really is a fundamental shift, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, now let's look at Propy. What's their main focus? Different angle.
Yeah, different angle. Propy's strength is really using blockchain tech to revolutionize the nuts and bolts, the title and escrow process in real estate, making property transfers, smoother, faster, more secure worldwide.
Okay, so less about the rental income, more about the transaction itself.
Exactly. They really emphasize the real-world transactions they've already done, over $4 billion worth, which is significant. And they're integrating AI as well to speed up closings, reduce errors, that kind of thing.
And they have a token.
They do. Their utility and governance token is TPRO. It runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And what's quite notable is it's listed on Coinbase Prime. That gives it, a strong connection to the more traditional finance world.
Right, accessibility for a different crowd, maybe?
Hmm. And they're also planning to introduce staking rewards for holding TPRO. So another way to potentially earn, but tied to the platform's success rather than direct rent.
Okay, interesting. So Landshare is like democratizing ownership and rental income. Propy is making the actual process of buying and selling way more efficient using blockchain. Now let's bring in our imaginary debaters. Grant Cardone with his focus on, aggressive growth, cash flow. Where would he likely stand?
Well, based on that profile, Cardone would almost certainly champion Landshare. You can just hear it, right? His perspective would zoom in on that cash flow potential, the rental yields, maybe even boosting yields with NFTs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the 10x mindset.
Exactly. He'd see Landshare as opening up real estate investment to everyone, making it super accessible. He might even call it like REITs on steroids.
Huh, yeah, I can imagine that.
And he definitely point to their partnership with Roofstock that gives them access to a huge, like $3 billion pool of U.S. rental properties.
Huh.
Cardone's all about seizing the moment, right?
Yeah.
Capitalizing on this whole real-world asset, or RWA, growth trend.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about Robert Kiyosaki? His emphasis is usually more on like fundamental value, wealth preservation, hard assets.
Right. So Kiyosaki, in this hypothetical debate, would probably lean towards Propy.
Yeah.
His focus would likely be on the fundamental strength of real transactions, the solid infrastructure.
The underlying mechanics.
Precisely. He'd highlight Propy being licensed, integrated into existing real estate systems.
For Kiyosaki, it's often about long-term wealth building and the sheer scalability of Propy's approach. I mean, the global real estate market is massive, right?
Yeah.
$43 trillion plus.
Huge.
So while he'd probably acknowledge tokenization as a big trend, he'd likely add a word of caution, maybe about relying too heavily on individual property yields or, the volatility of specific tokens.
So Cardone chasing the immediate, potentially higher returns,
Yeah.
Kiyosaki prioritizing the security, the efficiency, the plumbing of the whole transaction process. That definitely aligns with their general philosophy.
Right, yeah. Let's drill down into the tokens themselves then. You mentioned Landshare has two, Propy has one. Tell us more about Land and LZROA versus Peer dollars.
Okay. So Landshare uses that dual token system, and it's on the BNB chain, which is, another popular blockchain known for speed and lower fees usually.
Yeah.
You've got Landshare utility, governance, platform stuff. And LZROA is that asset-backed stablecoin tied to the properties.
Right.
There was also some talk in the source material about a potential buyback and burn mechanism for Landshare, maybe even funded by some of the rental income. That could potentially support the land price.
Interesting mechanism. And Propy.
Propy uses just the one utility and governance token, PureOA, and that's on Ethereum. And as we mentioned, that Coinbase listing is a big deal for accessibility, especially for more traditional investors or funds.
TradFi friendly, you could say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they have those planned staking rewards for PureO holders. So holding the token lets you earn based on the platform's growth and usage.
Okay. Now, in terms of actual use, like real world adoption on the ground, who's making bigger waves right now?
Well, Propy really stands out here with that $4 billion plus in real estate transactions already processed using their blockchain system. That's a solid track record.
Yeah, that's not trivial.
No.
Yeah.
And their partnerships, apparently with some government entities too, that suggests they're getting integrated into the traditional real estate world.
Okay. And Landshare.
Landshare, being a bit newer in this specific model, is more focused on building out that fractional ownership side, making direct property ownership accessible, leveraging partnerships like Roofstock to get inventory.
So different kinds of traction, really. Propy has the runs on the board for transaction volume and maybe more institutional links. Landshare is pushing hard on investor accessibility for income.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Passive income is obviously a huge draw for many people. How exactly do these platforms generate it for users? You touched on it, but let's clarify.
Sure. So Landshare's main way is through those rental yield vaults. That's where they're aiming for those, 7-11% APY returns we talked about. It's directly linked to the rent collected from the tokenized properties. They also mentioned possible NFT yield boosters, ways to potentially increase your returns further.
So the rent comes in, gets distributed somehow.
Basically, yeah. When a property generates income, a portion is distributed to the holders of the corresponding LSRWA tokens. So your share of the profit depends on how many tokens you hold, presumably minus platform fees, of course.
Right, always fees. And Propy's passive income angle.
Propy's approach is different. As I said, it's the planned staking rewards for PPRO holders.
Right.
So you lock up your PRO tokens, basically, and earn more PRO over time. It's passive, but it's not tied directly to rental income from a specific property. It's more linked to the overall health and adoption of the Propy platform itself.
Got it. Different mechanisms entirely. Now, accessibility. You mentioned Landshare's $1 entry. How easy is it generally to get started and, importantly, to trade these tokens if you want to get out?
Liquidity. Yeah, Landshare definitely wins on the low entry point, just $1. And the 247 global trading on, decentralized exchanges means anyone, anywhere can potentially participate.
But liquidity might be a catch.
It could be, yeah. It's worth noting that because Land and LSRWA have smaller market caps currently, the liquidity, meaning how easily you can buy or sell without affecting the price too much, might be lower compared to bigger tokens.
Okay. And Propy with PPRO.
Well, with PPRO being listed on Coinbase, that makes it very TradFi friendly, as you said.
Right.
That listing generally provides significant liquidity and access for a much broader range of investors, including potentially larger ones.
So Propy might be easier to trade in larger amounts.
Probably, yes. While Propy is also involved in things like fractionalized property NFTs, their main token focus isn't quite the same super low entry point for individual property tokens like Landshare's LSRWA.
Okay, so Landshare is maybe more accessible for like absolute beginners with very little capital. Propy offers potentially better liquidity and easier access for, say, established crypto investors or even traditional finance players.
That seems like a fair summary, yeah.
What about their future plans? Where are they heading? Growth strategies.
Landshare's strategy seems focused on just, doing more of what they do. expanding their range of tokenized property offerings, getting more houses onto the platform,
Yeah.
and also integrating more deeply with DeFi, decentralized finance, potentially creating more ways to use or earn yield on their tokens.
Makes sense. Build out the core offering, Propy.
Propy has a pretty detailed roadmap. Launching their Play staking program is a big one. They also mention adding gamification, maybe incentives to encourage platform use,
Interesting.
plus further AI integration to make transactions even smoother, and importantly, expanding their services nationwide across the U.S. They're aiming for broad coverage.
Okay, ambitious plans from both. Let's quickly check the market snapshot. Where were the prices and market caps roughly as of, say, May 2025 in our scenario?
Right, so land was around 76 cents with a market cap of about $4.4 million, relatively small still.
Okay.
PRO is trading around $1.01, but with a significantly larger market cap, somewhere in the $60 million to $100 million range.
Big difference in size there. And recent performance. Any notable moves?
Yeah, both showing positive signs recently.
Yeah.
Land was reportedly up about 30% in the last month, maybe driven by those partnership announcements. And Fora was also up around 28% in the last 7 days. And of course, it's had that Coinbase listing advantage since January 2022, giving it a longer public market history.
Okay. So reflecting on all that, it feels like they cater to different risk appetites, perhaps. Landshare, maybe higher potential yield, but operating in a newer niche, smaller cap, potentially more volatility associated with individual properties or the token itself.
That's a fair assessment. The rewards are linked to specific assets, which cuts both ways.
Whereas Propy, with its established platform, larger market cap, focus on infrastructure, might offer, I don't know, a bit more stability maybe. But the returns aren't directly tied to rent checks in the same way.
Exactly. It highlights that key difference in their approach and potentially their investor base. So, if you're primarily interested in getting direct passive income from rental properties and that very low entry point is attractive,
Yeah.
Landshare could be really appealing.
Right.
But if you're perhaps more focused on the big picture, the future of how real estate transactions happen globally, and you like a platform with growing institutional recognition and deeper liquidity, maybe Propy fits better.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. What are the absolute core takeaways here?
I think fundamentally Landshare's core value is about democratizing access, giving more people a shot at rental income through fractionalized ownership. Simple as that, really.
Yeah.
Propy, on the other hand, is focused squarely on efficiency and security, making the actual process of buying and selling real estate better using blockchain.
So both using tokenization, but aiming at different parts of the real estate puzzle.
Precisely. Disrupting traditional real estate, but in distinct ways. Landshare speaks more perhaps to the individual investor wanting income now. Propy is maybe looking more at transforming the underlying infrastructure of the entire industry.
Okay, here's maybe a final thought to leave people with. Are we seeing, with platforms like Landshare and Propy, the actual dawn of a truly liquid, globally accessible real estate market? Or are they still, just navigating the very complex, very entrenched traditional industry? And I guess what role will things like regulation and just mainstream acceptance play in whether they ultimately succeed on a massive scale?
That's absolutely the crucial question, isn't it? The billion-dollar question, maybe even trillion.